Good evening and welcome to the June 7, 2023 meeting of the Holland City Council. I'm Mayor Nathan Box and I'm calling the meeting to order. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Byrd.
Present.
Freeman.
Here.
Peters. Here. Corbin.
Here.
Coronado.
Present.
Arnshorst.
Here.
Hoekstra.
Here.
Raymond.
Here.
Mayor Box.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Wonderful, thank you. We're going to begin this meeting as we have for many years, first with an opening prayer this evening by Councilmember Coronado, followed immediately by the Pledge of Allegiance, and we would invite you to join us if you're so inclined.
O great Spirit, whose voice we hear in our daily lives and whose breath gives us life to the world, thank you for the many blessings of today, for our community and the wisdom to guide each of us on this journey. Let us to continue to do the work for the great good of our community, our city, our neighbors. May we be guided with wisdom, courage, and love by your Spirit in our decision-making always. Please allow us to be open and teachable in our daily lives. Namaste.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Belinda. Next item on our agenda are consent agenda items. These are items that are considered to be fairly routine and have been reviewed by council as part of our regular packet. They will be voted on with one motion unless a member of the public or a member of council asks to have an item removed from its place on the consent agenda, and then it will be placed in its regular order on the regular agenda. But before I ask that, Kathy, would you please review the consent agenda for us?
4B, approval of minutes, May 17, 2023 regular meeting, and May 24, 2023 study session. 4C, oaths of office. 4D, planning commission. 1055 Lincoln Avenue rezoning request, final adoption June 21, 2023. 4E, city clerk, claim filed against the city. 4F, transportation services, 40th Street improvement project, drainage easements at 304 and 342 East 40th Street. 4G, transportation services, coastal container railroad crossing on Industrial Avenue. 4H, transportation services, 2023 sidewalk repair project. 4I, transportation services, city's portion of the Holland Board of Public Works Wildwood Improvement Project. 4J, finance, place delinquent ordinance violation invoices on summer 2023 property tax bills. 4K, finance, quarterly investment report. 4L, finance, acceptance of grant award from the recycling partnership. 4M, finance, February financial reports. 4N, management administrative services, downtown group, residential overnight parking fees. 4O, management administrative services, downtown group, parking lot lease fee adjustment and lot lease termination. 4P, management administrative services, International Festival of Holland, approval of entertainment agreements. 4Q, management administrative services, revocable license agreement awning 44 West Washington Avenue.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. Is there any member of the audience who would like to have an item removed from the consent agenda and placed in its regular order on the regular agenda? Seeing none. Any member of council that would like to have an item removed from consent and placed on the regular agenda? Seeing none there either. What is the pleasure of council in regard to the consent agenda?
Move to approve consent agenda.
Moved by Coronado. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Arnshorst. Any discussion? Seeing none. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Byrd.
Yes.
Freeman.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Corbin.
Yes.
Coronado.
Yes.
Arnshorst.
Yes.
Hoekstra.
Yes.
Raymond.
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Wonderful, thank you. Next item on our agenda is public comment. Under the Open Meetings Act of the State of Michigan, we provide in all of our public meetings the opportunity for the public to be able to communicate to council or to any of those boards, committees, or commissions. We do have some guidelines that we would like you to follow. One is this is one-way communication. It's an opportunity for you to speak to us. We don't engage in discussion or answer questions at this time, but if it's something that staff can follow up with later, or maybe we would be able to later, we can do that. We also ask you that you limit your time to 5 minutes. There are 3 lights on the dais in front of me. There's a green light, a yellow light, and a red light. Green light means you're doing well on time. Yellow light means that you have 1 minute left, and red light means that your time has expired, and we are strict about that. If you would like to speak, please come and approach the podium, and please state your name and the municipality in which you live before you speak, so we have that on the record. With that being said, is there anyone here who would like to address council at this time? And would you please state your name and municipality for the record?
If you give me a minute, I can do that.
Absolutely.
My name is Bob Hamilton, and I'm from the City of Holland. I'm actually here on behalf of the City of Holland Human Relations Commission. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, city staff, Mr. Duckworth. As Holland continues to grow into a welcoming and thriving community, as we all envision it will, the Human Relations Commission would like to invite you to 3 events coming up in the next month that celebrate some of the vibrant and diverse communities that we serve. June 17th and 18th, we'll be celebrating Juneteenth at Collin Park. On June 24, the Pride Festival is being held at Centennial Park. And from July 12th through the 15th, the La Houppe Fiesta Week celebration will be held at the Holland Civic Center. We invite you, all the other kind, loving attendees here tonight, visitors to Holland, to attend these unifying celebrations that serve to recognize the value in the wonderful, diverse communities that we serve here in Holland. We hope you will all take time out of your schedules to join us. Additionally, as we move through the summer, we look forward to celebrating the Americans with Disabilities Act in July and August, and we will keep you posted on those details at later meetings. Thank you again for your continuing service on behalf of all members, residents of the City of Holland.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address council at this time? And would you please state your name and municipality for the record?
Hi, I'm Catherine Ristela Bass of the City of Holland. I am also on the Human Relations Commission, but also as an individual citizen, I just want to say thank you to the City of Holland and the prior commissioners on the Human Relations Commission before me for having the foresight to do Pride and Juneteenth and La Houppe and the International Festival, showing what a wonderfully complex community this is and how everyone is welcome and how we extend beyond our borders. I just returned from a trip to various other countries of the world, and you wouldn't believe how many people were happy and excited to hear that I was from Holland, Michigan, and wanted to hear all about it. So, as our mayor likes to say, how lucky are we that we get to live here? Thank you all.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address council at this time? And would you please state your name and municipality for the record?
Barbara Lee Van Horsen. I live in Grand Haven City, and I'm here as the experimenter of the Momentum Center. I haven't been here for a little while, and it's time to give you an update on our work. We continue to serve people with mental illness, addictions, and disabilities through our Momentum Center, and about a year ago, we opened in Holland. So we now are on 14th Street in the former Community Action House on right next to Collin Park. And if you haven't been there, please stop by. We continue to charge $1 for membership, and then people can participate in anything at no other cost. And we have recently opened the Momentum Ice Cream Parlor. So we're serving country dairy ice cream for $1 a scoop. Mondays from 3 to 7, Fridays from 11 to 2. We'll expand those hours as we identify volunteers. So if anybody wants to volunteer, make sure to let me know, because we do want to offer that more often. This Friday, I want to invite you to join us for a summer kickoff. We are going to be at the Momentum Center here in Holland from 5 to 7:30 with ice cream and activities, family-friendly event, and more information on the summer teen program that we'll be running this year in partnership with CMH and the ISD. and Arbor Circle, where we're offering recreational opportunities and outings that focus on relationships, mental wellness, and well-being for our teenagers who continue to need places to connect in that positive community when school is not in session. So you can learn more about that, and you can join us for wonderful, delicious ice cream tomorrow night. Friday night. Also, if you haven't heard, in Grand Haven, we're moving our corporate offices to the new to the old Rendezvous Restaurant on 7th Street. We anticipate moving within the next month, and that will help us with long-term investment in the work we do throughout the county, and with financial stability as we have a building to actually own eventually. We're moving in, and we're launching a capital campaign in the next 2 months so that we can actually pay for it. That's key. So thank you for your time. Hope to see you for ice cream on Friday night. As Belinda said, namaste.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address council at this time? And would you please state your name and municipality for the record?
Ann Henriksen, Zealand. Holland is excited about the proposed ice rink fundraiser tomorrow night at Tulip Hotel. Then there is the prospect from the May 9th land swap vote for the lakefront property being commercially developed with Plan A. Summer brings people leaving Holland and going to their cottages. South Shore residents go out on their boats and yachts. They usually trust what is going on in city government to just be business as usual. It is difficult for the Holland residents to imagine that as they relax 2019, the first drag brunch took place July 24th. Nathan Box was the chairman of the board of the Civic Center at the time. Michael Schutice, running for 2023 council at large seat, was also part of the original board involved in this drag brunch, according to the Sentinel. I mention it because a friend of mine curiously attended, and she said it was embarrassingly sexual. In August 2020, by 8-1 vote, sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression were added to the city's anti-discrimination DEI ordinance, all under the radar of the relaxing summer residents. 2023 billboards now advertising Holland as celebrating sexual orientation Pride Month. The Centennial Park celebration will be family-friendly, I assume. Planned Parenthood will be offering free condoms for safe and healthy LGBTQ sex. Here's the moral brain bleed. Parents are realizing adult sexual indoctrination is influencing our Holland children's innocence with sex education and LGBTQ plus sex behavior. It is under the guise of DEI. Did you know that on May 17, the Ottawa County Young Adult Service, OAISD, school board recommended to vote sex education for special needs adults 18 to 26 years old who are cognitively first and second graders? A parent looked into who designed the sex curriculum, GLAD, a worldwide organization, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and queer media advocacy. Their goal is media community engagement that ensures authentic LGBTQ stories are seen, heard, and actualized. The definition of actualize is to make reality of. The first lesson is called, Are You Ready to Have Sex? If you have a family member who has special needs, you should be outraged that this information is about to explode into these young special needs adults' lives. Wrong, just plain wrong. On May 3rd at City Council, there was a serious matter presented of a controversial book, Gender Queer. Gender Queer is a memoir of a child's development up to adulthood. It is clear upon reading it what happens in children's development when they are left to grow up without parenting and influenced by a sexual culture. Twice during public comment, we have brought this book to the attention of the City Council of Holland. I appreciate Councilman Byrd's presentation Despite the opinion of some, it is a stunning and truthful use of the crude language in this book. Our children are exposed to this in our schools and our Herrick Library system. If this is not healthy language to mention at a city council meeting, then why do our children have to endure it? According to the director of the Herrick Library, genderqueer is in the adult section only. She agreed that any age has access to it. A child's library card does not have any restrictions. Parents can ask for limitations, but rarely are they warned about the content of any of the books. This is not banning a book. It is to ask that it be used only by adults and only checked out by adults. I have an envelope to give each one of you. I hope you look at it. Please think about the young children at first grade readers seeing these pictures because an older child gave it to them to read. What if you had been given this at their age? If you refuse to look at what is happening to our children, then you should not be on this council. I was a middle school teacher of sixth graders in the 90s in New York, and I was—
Mr. Mayor, that is 5 minutes.
I'm sorry, but your time has expired. Is there anyone else who would like to address council at this time? Seeing none, I will close the public comment period. Next item on our agenda, item 9, written petitions and communications. In addition to providing an opportunity for people to address council in public at our meetings, we do also have a special email address that you can use to send email to city council if you're not able to attend a meeting or if that's not convenient for you. And we do read those emails as part of our packet. We don't read them out loud here in the meetings, but we do accept them into the record when we have them. And we do not happen to have any this evening. But I always like to let people know that the email address that you can use to send email to City Council is publiccomment@cityofholland.com. That's publiccomment@cityofholland.com. Next item on our agenda is item 12E 1.1, 40th Street Improvement Project, additional drainage work with the recommendation to award a bid. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm going to ask Brian White to come on up. We'll see if he can go to either place. But, this was something we probably could have had on consent, but otherwise we would have a lot of consent and not on regular agenda tonight. And realistically, this is an important project that for some of us, we know that when it rains really hard, this is a problem area in our city. And this is a project that we've been working towards for some time and excited to bring these sets of recommendations to you. So, Brian, why don't you walk us through it and why we're doing it?
Okay, thank you, Keith. Good evening, Mayor Box. Good evening, council members and members of the public. Before you tonight, several items. Yeah, great, thanks. Several items related to our 40th Street project, 40th Street reconstruction project. As you may recall, 40th Street reconstruction project was approved, at least the initial phase of it was approved earlier this year. It involves the reconstruction of 40th Street between US 31 and Industrial Avenue, kind of out by our neck of the woods at the transportation office. Basically the project as a whole, the larger project, if you will, involves cooperation with several different entities in that area. There's 2 developments, one at Hudsonville Ice Cream, one at Coastal Container, that are contributing to this work. And then there's also, as you'll note, some contributions from MDOT as well. And basically what we're trying to do here, and I'll just use the map to kind of step through the work. Let's hope the mouse is working. So if I start at the south end, and again, just to orient you, this is M40 coming into town, around and by the water tower, CSX mainline railroad track here, and then Lincoln Avenue M40 as it connects up to 31 here. This area highlighted in light blue is the railroad overpass over US 31. That's really the first area in town when it rains hard, it floods. And that obviously being a trunk line is really notable. So we want to obviously do what we can to improve that situation, and these improvements will do that. But then also there's other areas downstream of this drainage course that'll benefit from these improvements that we're proposing along the Maplewood Intercounty Drain and branches to the Maplewood Intercounty Drain. So a lot of benefits both right here at 31 and the railroad overpass, but also downstream along the Maplewood Drain and the tributaries. And basically what we're talking about here is this area that's along M40 is basically what we'll call the tributary area, or basically all the rainfall that collects here used to go and basically travel through the Hudsonville Ice Cream property along the railroad bed, and then this is where it would cause some trouble here when it would rain hard and flood this area and the overpass there with the railroad. So what we propose to do, and again with cooperation from Hudsonville Ice Cream and Coastal Container, is basically reroute that along Industrial Avenue and then through our transportation services facility, that property there, and then through two properties that border the south side of 40th Street, and then along and up to the MDOT US 31 right-of-way and the ditch line along that right-of-way. And so along the way, we would have improvements here by Hudsonville Ice Cream along Industrial, and then a little bit further north of there, improvements by Coastal Container in relation to that railroad crossing that they're doing. And then this is where we pick up with what's included in that Brenner excavating bid that's before you tonight. Is there's some work along the ditch line on Industrial Avenue, as well as a two-stage ditch that we're going to create to get through our property, create some detention area next to an existing conservation easement, and then run that up through and basically get it into this branch of the Maplewood Intercounty Drain. The 40th Street reconstruction project is doing some additional drainage work under that project, new culvert underneath 40th Street, as well as some work downstream, immediately downstream of the culvert with retaining walls and what have you. And then MDOT also included with this Brenner bid is some earth excavation in the infield that's basically be alongside or next to the on-ramp from 40th Street to US 31, where we're going to create some space for water to collect there as well. So basically from that point down to just north of Hudsonville Ice Cream, all this work along this drainage course is included in that Brenner excavating bid. So we have that before you tonight for approval. And then the next piece of this is obviously the who's going to pay for it and how that's all going to work. And that, fortunately, we've got a willing and able partner in MDOT, and I'm happy to talk about those specifics too at the appropriate time for that agreement with MDOT. So again, just to summarize kind of what's involved and what's included, happy to answer any questions that you may have about specifics.
Any questions from council? Yeah, Dave.
Yeah, one real quick one. You're confident that this, I'm assuming it's a rerouting on the western section of 40th Street there, is not going to cause any difficulty for those residential areas?
Yeah, no, we don't believe it will. In fact, I think it's going to be a benefit. We've modeled this through hydrologic modeling, and we think it's going to be a benefit all along this drainage course. And really, when you look at the two areas that are hatched, the one on our property, will be designed to retain water. And then the other one down in the MDOT infield, same thing, where it's going to hold back some water. So it should benefit the downstream folks there.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
Yep.
Mr. Corbin? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Raymond.
So Coastal Container and Hudsonville Ice Cream, are they compelled to participate in this, or are they?
So that was part of
Voluntarily.
development work that they did. And so they, basically this section of storm sewer was put in by Hudsonville Ice Cream as part of that development. And then a little bit further down, basically just north of that is where that railroad crossing is gonna occur. And that's where Coastal Container is doing some work with culverts and things like that. So they're both contributing as part of their respective development. Yep.
Mr. Corbin?
Yeah, so Brian, along Lincoln, there's some growth, commercial growth, and potential more commercial growth in the near future. We're hopeful. If that were to occur, do we have capacity to use any runoff that would go into this new drain system?
Yeah, so we would still hold any future development to our design and our drainage standards, which basically requires them to mitigate up to the 100-year storm for any improvements that they would do. We wouldn't change that approach. But I do think that from an overall drainage standpoint, we're going to be in a better position when it rains hard downstream of here. So which properties are you talking about specifically, Scott?
I guess along the Lincoln corridor from south of 31 down to 40th, that corridor there is.
Yeah, yep. And I think there are
has some potential.
Yep. And so I don't see any drawbacks to that or any adverse effects. But I do, it's not going to eliminate their requirements under our drainage standards. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions from council members?
I have
Yes,
one
Ms.
question.
Aaronshorst.
If you could elaborate a little bit, I'm not concerned about it, but I don't understand it.
Sure.
Excavating has provided a bid, and while unit prices don't completely agree with those included in their original 40th Street bid, they do appear competitive.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, let me elaborate on that. So Brenner Excavating basically was awarded our 40th Street project through the original bid for the project that went through MDOT.
Okay.
And so they've submitted an additional bid for this additional work. That bid, when you look at the unit prices, some are better, some are worse. It's kind of hard to pigeonhole because it's different types of work. This is more of a mass bailing, like balancing an earthwork intensive project, whereas that original project was more road work, pavement, that sort of a thing. So when you take those factors into account and you look at the unit prices and you compare them, I feel or believe that they're competitive.
Okay.
So.
Good. Thank you.
Yep. Other questions from council members? I've just got a couple. Brian, sorry to throw you a curveball, but I was at the Project Clarity presentation last night, and I'm seeing some parallels here, and I just have some questions. Maybe out of the blue, if you don't know the answers to these, that's great. One of the things that was mentioned last night is because of some of the work that has been done both in the city and out in the townships in regard to more wetlands areas, better design of the ditches, and even some of the things that we've done, say at Collin Park or out in the parking lot here, that we're seeing fewer and probably not as intensive flooding events as we may have had 10 years ago prior to that happening. I'm guessing some of this is going to help with that kind of thing as well. And are we using some of those similar techniques that we've done in other places that are kind of above and beyond what may be in the technical standards for water management?
Yeah, sure. And I can elaborate. So obviously the detention areas, those are, again, checking back the water, that's helpful. We are proposing a 2-stage ditch between one of those detention areas here and Industrial Avenue. And again,
I learned what a 2-stage ditch was last night.
Did
so
you? Okay.
Yes, I did.
So again,
Yeah.
it's kind of there's a low flow element to the 2-stage ditch, and then it benches out, and you have more capacity should heavier rainfall come through. And again, so we're incorporating those where we can into projects like this, and it is going to benefit. Now I do want to say though that I think we're certainly witnessing and seeing more extreme events. So I think that again, I think this is appropriate to be utilizing this and to try and prepare as much as we can for those unique and maybe more frequent weather events that we're going to probably see in the future.
Yeah, I was happy to hear about the two-stage ditch. I'm also happy to see the wetland detention area that's out by the transportation center. I think is a great way to be able to deal with that, rather than just saying we're going to continue that flow along the way. We're going to try to slow that down
Right.
As part of the process. Great.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions from council members? Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
What is the pleasure of council in regard to this item?
Move we approve the recommendation?
Moved by Hoekstra. Is there support? Support by Coronado. Any discussion? Seeing none. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Freeman.
Yes.
Peters. Yes. Corbin. Yes. Coronado.
Yes.
Arnsworth.
Yes.
Hoekstra.
Yes.
Raymond.
Yes.
Byrd. Yes. Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next item, 12E 1.2, 40th Street Improvement Project, Michigan Department of Transportation, participation with additional drainage work. This sounds very familiar. Mr. Van Beek.
And I'm going to jump in just a second, Brian. If I think he kind of said this is like the agreements of who pays for it and everything, and I'm sure if you have questions, you can ask him, or if he has something else to say. I really just want to take this moment to really highlight this project as being a great example of what a lot of times just happens. And in this case, it's very much Brian and his team, but really Brian on the front end of this. When you put together all the parts of this, you've got Hudsonville Ice Cream, you've got Coastal Container, you've got MDOT, you've got our standards, you've got, there were a lot of moving parts on this that really, like, oh, like that happened last year, and this, it just demonstrates, I think, really good work by Brian and staff of taking a look at something that's pretty complex. It probably could have been easier to just go, well, you know, but really swinging hard for the fences and coming up with the best solution, even though it took a little bit more work and collaboration and working together, which is what we obviously believe in trying to do around here. So I just want to take that moment and say thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Anything you want to add, Brian? I'd leave it at that if I were you.
I'm good, thank you.
All right. Any questions for staff on this? All right. What is the pleasure of council in regard to item 12E 1.2?
Move that we approve the 40th Street Improvement Project with the Michigan Department of Transportation participation.
Moved by Aaronsource. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Coronado. Any discussion? Seeing none. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Peters. Yes. Corbin. Yes. Coronado.
Yes.
Arnsworth.
Yes.
Hoekstra.
Yes.
Raymond.
Yes.
Byrd.
Yes.
Freeman.
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you. Item 12E 4.1, designation of the state and local fiscal recovery funds, colloquially known here as SLFRIF. Mr. Van Beek.
I'm so glad that you called it SLFRIF. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Lynn, I'm going to ask you to come up because I think you can get into some technicalities and certainly answer some questions here. But we've been talking to you, Council, on the tour last week about some projects that were exciting that are ongoing and soon to come in our Municipal Capital Improvement Fund, and also some changes with federal ARPA funding and discussions of things that they were going to do. And this recommendation that Lynn will outline is something that we think makes sure that it standardizes and safely uses some money that's available for our use, makes reporting easier, and also puts that money available not only for future decisions by you as council, but also really in the direction that we think that you've indicated you want us to use it. But I hope I didn't take too much of what you were going to say, Lynn, so please explain what I had wrong.
Nope, it's all good. So good evening. So I just want to give a little bit of history. Most everybody knows, but the City of Holland was awarded the $8.4 million in the state and local fiscal recovery funds. I can't say that word quite as well as Keith. So to date, we have had some of these funds obligated, and as a reminder, we had obligated about half of it, so $4.2 million to be used towards the city's broadband project. And then we also had approved the usage of some funding for additional fire staffing for 2.5 to 3 years. and that was started in fiscal year '23 already. And we then also used it for some wage increases in fiscal year '23 for staff retention. So of that amount, we have about a little bit over $2.8 million that remains unobligated. So we were very careful considering the best use of those funds. And however, we recently saw with the debt ceiling negotiations that they had tossed around some clawbacks of some of the unobligated ARPA funds. So while we don't really know, we survived that challenge, and then we don't really know for sure what they would consider unobligated, but we felt, once an idea is floated, sometimes it does come back. So we felt like the time was right to go ahead and recommend that we obligate the remainder of these funds. And this part is where I want to explain what we're requesting. So you may also recall that anyone who got, any municipality that got under $10 million was afforded the opportunity to basically what we sometimes call standard deduction. You could claim it all as revenue replacement because there was a huge calculation first you had to do to see how much you actually lost, which we did the calculation, and we, on paper, did actually lose more than 10 million. So, but that's to set, so that was way back in 2020, 21. So since then, of course, the city has a history of being very fiscally conservative. So we've managed to continue our general fund and replace those revenues as well. So at this point, we've already proposed the fiscal year 24 budget, and we again figured out a way to fund everything that we needed. So what we're recommending is that we obligate this money to be used towards public safety payroll. And why we're going to do that is because that's obviously an allowed use. But since this would basically replace what we already have designated for the funding, because we don't really give $2.8 million more in payroll, it's just the payroll we already had budgeted for. So since it's sort of a one-time revenue source, we are suggesting that we also match that inflow into the general fund. Here's where it gets kind of complicated, with an equal outflow over to the MCIF fund, because traditionally if we get grants or some kind of one-time revenue, we don't try to use it for operations, because then the next year when you do your budget, if you don't get that anymore, it's really difficult. So that's why we are recommending obligating the funds to be used towards fiscal year 24 public safety payroll, and then at the same time doing a budget amendment for the fiscal year 24 budget that we've already just approved that would transfer that money over to the MCF fund, so it would be available for some of those wonderful projects that the city has kind of queued up and for future. So it's an investment in the city, but using it towards public safety payroll is one of the simplest ways to go through the audit process for these funds. I would be happy to answer any questions.
I'm going to start with Mr. Byrd and then Mr. Vreeman and then Mr. Corbin, and we'll keep going right on down the line if we need to.
So to make it very simple, we're taking 2.8 from SLIFRA, and we're moving it to the public safety, right? And then we're taking 2.8 out of that and moving it to the capital fund.
Yes, that's basically what we're doing.
And that's just because of auditing purposes. So,
Right.
So it's the books clean, I guess.
Right, because so when you get these funds from the federal government, you have quite an extensive audit process to go through. So we're trying to use it in a manner that makes the process the most efficient for the city and least time consuming from the audit perspective.
Mr.
Then-
Vreeman, Mr. Corbin, and then Jay. Mr.
And I
Peters.
guess my follow-up then, just very simple. So that secures those funds so that if something happens with SLIFRA guidelines, requirements, they can't pull it back.
Right, because it's been
Got it.
obligated and used.
Got it.
Mr. Peters.
Under the, this loan process, state and local fiscal recovery funds, they were approved uses, and certainly police and fire was approved use for those funds.
Yes, that is correct.
Would those funds be approved for new capital projects?
Yes, so it was also approved for city, when you did the revenue replacement, which we did, Then it's like the other side is what you're gonna spend it on. So what's called pay-as-you-go capital infrastructure projects is approved use.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Corbin?
Yeah, mine's that same question. So why wouldn't we just go directly to NCI with the funds? Because we have projects pending right now. The library, the ice rink, other capital projects.
Into the mic.
Oh, excuse me. Did you hear that? Well, I'm not fiber, but I mean, we do have other capital projects that we're talking about. Why would we do it twice? Why would not just move it into the EMCI?
Really, because it's back to that audit process, because since we haven't, again, as a reminder, we have to definitely obligate, we got some timing restrictions when you do pay-as-you-go capital. So you have to have it under contract, obligated by the end 12/31/24, and all the way finished and paid for by 2026. And while we would be putting unnecessary time, and really it comes down to the audit. When you audit payroll, it's a very, very standard type of audit. And when you audit a capital project, you have a whole bunch of different restrictions. Not to mention, if you do a project under some of these federal funds, you may be subject to some other type of restrictions under the federal procurement standards.
Any other questions? Ms. Aaronshorst?
Yes, well done. I mean, that's why we enjoy having you as finance director.
Well, it's not just me.
Your whole team. If the timing had been different, would you have felt you needed to do this? Or, the debt crisis, it was resolved by the time it comes to us. But back when you were planning this, who knew? Would you have done this anyhow? Would it have, they don't play well together in Washington. Was that making you nervous as well as having the debt ceiling crisis?
Well, I think it's been on our radar, obviously, because we have to commit these funds or use them by 12/31/24. But that just starts to, once you hear something like that float around, sometimes those have a way of coming back even if you survive the first challenge. So it really just made sense to go ahead and not put ourselves in any kind of potential position that we could be subject to some clawbacks.
So are other government entities doing this also?
Yes, actually, that's so on the Government Finance Officers Association across the country, yes.
Okay, that's recommended. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Van Beek, and then Ms. Raymond.
Sorry. The only thing Lynn's exactly right. We'd talk about this every week or so, just kind of monitoring things, what others were doing. I think the other thing that maybe I'll just mention that was part of our discussions and ultimately this recommendation is if you dial back a year, 2 years ago, right, you heard us talk that we were a lot more hesitant about let's hold on to this money right now because we don't know if we need it for other purposes and we don't know what's around the corner. And we wanted a little bit more time not only to develop the long-range financial forecast, because we were not only doing that modeling, but we also wanted to see hey, is there something around the corner that's really bad news before we allocate this money for other purposes. And I think something can always happen negatively, right? So it's not like that risk is gone. And yet I think it's lowered. But also we've done the work and we've laid out all that information for you on the long-term financial forecast where we think we are comfortable with using it for this and then putting it in the MCIF to really put it towards some of these projects that we, and I think you by extension, are really excited about being able to do for the community.
So, Ms. Raymond?
So I'm wondering how it looks once it's transferred to the MCIF. Is this a separate amount or is it just added to the whole amount? And so I think you addressed it a little bit that we would have some additional funding to address projects that we've been looking at for the last little while. But I'm just wondering if at some point this $2.8 million kind of gets lost in the total, and so that I feel like I don't really know how we fund over time the MCIF, but this feels like, oh, here's a deposit that we could have some control over as opposed to the long-term plan? Like, this is new funding that we could use in a special way if we chose to. So am I making myself clear? Or-
Yeah, actually, you know what? That's a very good question, because in some places that don't have the planning tools that we have, that would be a concern, right? Because it just goes there, and then who knows what it gets spent on. But I can assure you that the 10-year to 50-year capital plan that we do at the city, that we kind of do in conjunction with the financial forecast, we have everything very well planned out. And so it is true that it can just be for general capital, but that's really kind of what happens in the MCIF. Like, we have some of our revenue sources typically are just to fund the MCIF. And by getting over to that fund, it's restrictive in nature already, because it then is restricted to those capital projects that would come out of that fund. So it will provide the fund balance, and we look at that in a 10-year to make sure. What we do is, so we first, when we build that plan, we first assess all of our needs, right? We know we have infrastructure needs to have the type of community we want to have. And so then what happens is we, okay, where can we get funding? And so when it comes to some individual projects, we can look for grants that are specific to the project, but most of the projects that we do in the MCF do not have complete specific funding. So we have to find all this other general type of funding. So this would kind of qualify as one of those more general ones. But I feel the way we do our planning with the projects, I don't see it getting lost, because we don't put projects in there unless they have gotten thoroughly vetted that they're really needed for the community. So it's just gonna be, it's gonna allow us to, and it won't allow us, because we still look for every grant we can find and every kind of revenue source we can find, as you saw with Brian, even on the capital projects, on the street projects. But it'll just allow us the flexibility to make sure we do the projects the way they should be done. And I think we always talk about that at the city.
Yeah. Mr. Van Beek?
Reading between that question, maybe, Lynn, if I can take that. Somewhat what I hear you maybe asking, and maybe a technical answer to your question, and then maybe kind of a intent answer or answer to your question. Technically, we would say no, don't, because of the auditing purposes and everything. Like, we never like to say we're going to park this money in this larger fund, but we want to specifically designate it for something. It would kind of defeat the technical purposes of what we're doing. And yet, what I'll tell you is, I think there might be a project coming up here really soon where we've talked to you about perhaps a gap with the ice rink, or maybe in a couple years, the rec center, that we have money there for. But I think we could also very easily, potentially, and not too long from now, basically make a connection of, hey, this money that we got is for this program, is for this specific project. Technically, from an audit perspective and all those types of things, we don't want to do the connections for all of that, but the intent behind it, which I think I kind of hear you maybe intimating, I think you're exactly right.
Yeah. Mr. Hoekstra?
Oh, yeah, thank you, Lynn, for that explanation. I had asked a couple of questions earlier, and your explanation has made it very clear to me what we're doing and why we're doing it, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Corbin?
Yeah, one last thing. I'll just add to Ms. Raymond's comments, Councilman Raymond's comments. As I feel the same way. You know, at the end of the year, you get your tax return. You're like, oh, I got this check. I'll put it in savings, and I'm going to do something on the house. I'm going to work on the house. And then you find out 6 months later, it's gone. Where did it all go, right? And I think that's my fear. I don't know if that's, I'm kind of hearing what you're saying is, we're going to be asked what we did with SLIFRA funds, right? We're going to be asked as council, what did you do? What impact did it have to the community? And we don't want to lose that, right? We've been able to tell to this point what we've done with those funds. And so I think if there's a really good intent by the staff to make sure we understand where that $2.8 million went and how it ties to a significant project that benefits the community, I think that would be very helpful.
So yeah, just following up on what Manager or Keith said is that, yeah, I think that'll be clear within a few months.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? This is one of those conversations that makes me love being part of this organization and part of this council because, frankly, along this dais, everybody has asked the questions that I had bouncing around in my head. And what I love about this community is we are fiscally conservative, we're thoughtful, we're prudent, and we're patient. And that almost bit us on this if things had happened a little bit differently with the debt reconciliation or the budget issue that came up. Why can't I think of the name of it in my head? Debt ceiling. Thank you. With the debt ceiling conversations that were there, and staff came up with a really good way to allow us to continue to be fiscally conservative, thoughtful, prudent, and patient with this money. And this council is doing exactly what we ought to be doing it as a council, saying we want to continue to do that, but we want to make sure we know exactly what we're doing with this money because it's our responsibility to manage this money for the benefit of the people of the city of Holland. And thank you for giving us a great way to be able to continue to do what we've done here for a long time. We're planners, and you guys are proving it every single day, so thank you.
Thank you.
Now, any other questions for staff? What is the pleasure of council in regard to this item?
Move to approve the designation of the state and local fiscal recovery funds.
Moved by Vreeman. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Byrd. Any discussion? Seeing none. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Corbin? Yes. Coronado?
Yes.
Arnshorst?
Yes.
Hoekstra?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Byrd?
Yes.
Vreeman?
Yes.
Peters? Mayor Box?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great. Thank you. Next item on our agenda, 12E 6.1, gifts. Kathy, would you please review the gifts for us?
The city manager's office is pleased to report the following gifts. Parks and Recreation Department, $15,345 were collected at the 2023 Tulip Dig event on Saturday, May 20, 2023. Department of Public Safety Services, Police Honor Guard Program, $100 received from the Greater Holland Zeeland Mayor's Prayer Breakfast held on May 4, 2023. It is recommended that these donations be accepted with appreciation, credited to the appropriate account, and an expression of gratitude be forwarded to said donors.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. What is the pleasure of council in regard to the gifts?
Move to approve said gifts for the token of our appreciation.
Moved by Coronado. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Arnshorst. Any discussion? I can't let a $15,345 morning selling tulip bulbs at $10 a bucket go by. I don't know if any of the rest of you were there that morning. I was at Window on the Waterfront Park. I have never seen that many people. All of the tulips were gone in 20 minutes. And if you do the math and you go, we got $15,345 at $10 a bucket. And you go, where does that $5 come from? I know we were handing out refunds to some folks who had a bucket that they were not able to get any tulips in because they went so quickly. And I'm sure there were a few where folks said, I only got a few of them, can I have half of my money back? And I'm sure that's what happened as well. Great event, great opportunity to be able to put some funds to some good charitable uses, to some beautification uses. And it spreads those tulips all over town. And I talked to people that were from multiple states away. I don't know, Matt, if you've got numbers on what happened at Windmill Island last weekend, or any kind of report at all.
I don't, but I'm sure it was about the same turnout.
Yeah, I heard a radio report that everything was gone in less than an hour, but if it was like it was at the Tulip Dig at Centennial Park and Window on the Waterfront, it was literally 20 minutes, and I have never seen that many people in the park before. So I just had to make that point. We've got a motion and we've got support. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 13, communications from the city manager.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to quickly go through a few things. We have 3 events this week. Last night, we already kind of referenced the Outdoor Discovery Center did the 10-year Project Clarity celebration. Maybe the mayor's going to say something more about this momentarily, but really cool event, great progress that they're making, and it's certainly not just a City of Holland thing. It's, again, one of those great examples of the secret sauce that we say about this area, where it's so many organizations and governments and farmers and nonprofits coming together. So that was a great event, exciting. I get to join with you tonight. And then tomorrow night, we have the ice rink fundraiser at the Tulip. I'm just going to call it the Tulip now, and if you don't know what that is, look it up, or I'll tell you later. The former City Flats. 5th floor, we're having that ice rink celebration fundraiser. And today was the LEDA event, Lakeshore Ethnic Diversity Alliance. They have an annual event. I don't know if it's 14, 15 years worth now, I think, that they've been going. Really great event. I'll share some information, and we usually get some links. There was in particular one documentary film that I thought was really great. So I'll share that in my Friday communication with all of you. At that event also, they officially launched that LEDA is the new administrative home, I guess I would call it, of the Welcoming Ottawa initiative, which is an offshoot of a welcoming initiative nationwide that they've done in a lot of regions and counties and cities, really talking about the benefits of not only immigrants but also talent coming from different parts of the nation and the world and integrating into places. There was a really great panel conversation with Lakeshore Advantage and some major corporations talking about that really the biggest hindrance that we have to growth or challenges to our corporations right now in their studies and their surveys is access to talent. So there seems to be a pretty clear link here. So it was exciting to do that. You all have approved, and the City of Holland has been a participant in that Welcoming Ottawa initiative up until this point and also moving forward. Speaking of talent, I figure I'd just say it. I think it was been in the news, but when this happens, it's been a long time since we've gotten one of these, but technically there's something called a WARN notice, and it's required through the federal government, but it's basically when a business of a certain size closes and has to lay off a certain or terminate a number of employees. And we did have one of those, ITW draw form. Their primary office and production facility is in Zeeland. They had an offshoot here in Holland, and they did close here recently. First date of separation was on May 30. It is in a location where we did not have a PA 198 with that company at that location, and it's actually part of a larger campus. So while I don't have any insider information on this, I would suspect that that will be a very much sought after location. So I wouldn't expect it to be on the market for long. And then finally, just the next couple weeks, I won't be with you. I will be working. I have a Michigan Municipal League event and a Michigan Employer Retirement Systems event. With our Wednesday nights, it seems like that's when other people want to do summer strategic gatherings and the like. Next week, Dave Koster, Ted Seiler will be here, I think, to give a really great update on what's been happening with the Holland Fiber Initiative. The Holland Board of Public Works Board, of course, and then some of that has come to you, is making really great progress on that. So I think that'll be a good time to give you an update at study session next week, and then the following week we'll be back here for regular session. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. I've got a number of appointments and a couple of proclamations tonight, but I can't let some of the great news that came out of that Project Clarity meeting last night go by. For those of you who know, it's been a 10-year regional public-private partnership designed to not only clean up Lake Macatawa, but also to try to create a healthier watershed And after 10 years, they wanted to kind of point to some of the milestones that they've had the opportunity to make. And I've just got some quick statistics that I'm going to run through. I couldn't take pictures of every one of Travis Williams' slides last night because they were coming fast and furious with amazing things that have been achieved in the last 10 years. New and restored wetlands, the equivalent of 115 Olympic-sized swimming pools just in the Macatawa area watershed, 77 acres of native prairie restoration, 3 miles of streams and waterways restored, 46,000 tons of sediment annually withheld from local waterways. And if you don't know what 46,000 tons looks like, that's the equivalent of 6,500 dump trucks lined up back to back the entire 20-mile length of the Macatawa River. That is sediment that is not going down that river every single year. They have 65 farms committed to best management practices. And that's the equivalent of 36,000 acres. 50% of the targeted land in the Macatawa watershed is now using best management farming practices, including 20,120 acres of cover crops. One of the things that they've done is some of the mitigation processes that they've done are what they call slag pits, iron slag pits, where it's essentially a big filter that's filled with iron slag. And they have seen a 90% reduction in phosphorus and turbidity between the water that goes into one of those pits and that comes out of those pits. There are 230 projects that keep over 40,000 pounds of phosphorus out of Lake Macatawa each and every year, and that's one of our biggest problems with Lake Macatawa. Their goal initially was a 70% reduction in phosphorus. We've gotten to the point where it's 62% reduced already. So they're doing great work. Still lots to do. This has been a crazy year. One thing, a statistic that hit me that I did not realize, that this year, this calendar year, up until April 5, was the wettest year on record. From April 6 to today, it's the driest on record. So those kind of crazy swings make people like Brian's job very, very difficult in being able to keep up with those things. So just some great news that came out of that. I don't know if Project Clarity and Travis Williams and the ODC Network are going to be sharing those slides, but it was incredible information, a great night of celebration. But they said, work's not done. It's ongoing. It's something we're going to need to continue to do, but great progress has been made.
I'll look for that info and try to share it in my Friday communication.
Awesome. Thank you, Keith. Appreciate that. I do have a number of appointments and recommendations. I'm recommending that the City Council first acknowledge the retirement of Tim Hemingway as his final term ends on June 30, 2023, after 14.5 years of service on the Board of Public Works Board of Directors. Tim has been an institution there. I'm also recommending to the City Council that they approve the appointment of Brian Lynn, whose name is very familiar to this council, to the Board of Public Works Board of Directors, whose term shall expire on June 30 of 2028. And the appointment of Judy Vischer and Dwayne Baker to the Compensation Commission with terms expiring June 30, 2025 and June 30, 2023, respectively. And approve the reappointment of Paul Lilly to the Board of Public Works Board of Directors with a term ending June 30 of 2028, and accept the resignations of Ryan Spencer and Mary Jo Wisweedle from the Compensation Commission effective May 11, 2023 and May 2024, respectively. And I would make that recommendation to council and be looking for a motion in that regard. Thank you, Mr. Vreeman. Is there support of Mr. Vreeman's motion? Support by Byrd. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And I do have two proclamations this evening. First one is in regard to Juneteenth. Whereas on June 19, 1865, 2 years after President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, enslaved Americans in Galveston, Texas, received word that they were free from bondage and were recognized for the first time as citizens, equal in person and property rights with their former masters. And whereas acting as the date of emancipation, June 19 became a long-standing day of celebration, known as Juneteenth. honoring African American resilience and the end of slavery, and encouraging unity and respect for all. And whereas across our city and country, we join hands in acknowledging the centuries of struggle, courage, and hope, and the work of the abolitionists, teachers, civil rights advocates, attorneys, public officials, and neighbors who have helped make real for all of the principles outlined in our nation's founding documents. And whereas we acknowledge our history and work collaboratively to address systemic racism, remove barriers, and provide opportunity for all. And whereas we celebrate the African American leaders and our African American brothers and sisters who have made indelible contributions locally to enrich our community and bring awareness around the community needs. And whereas the City of Holland stands in support of the I Am Academy and their and our collective work to empower African American adolescents to achieve their full potential by centering their identity, cultivating relationships, supporting educational success, providing college experiences, facilitating job readiness, and supporting educational readiness, ultimately changing the narrative and trajectory of our African American youth. And whereas we recommit to work toward greater accessibility and opportunity for all. Now, therefore, I, Nathan Box, Mayor of the City of Holland, Michigan, and members of the Holland City Council proclaim that the City of Holland celebrate June 19 as Juneteenth. As part of our commitment to anti-racism, racial and social justice, encouraging a day of reflection, recognition, acknowledgement, and healing. Further, we encourage the community participation at the Juneteenth celebrations on June 16 and 17, 2023. Given under my hand and the seal of the City of Holland the 7th day of June, 2023, Mayor Nathan Box. And I have a second proclamation this evening in regard to June as Pride Month. Whereas nationwide, individuals who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, or asexual, LGBTQIA+, celebrate Pride Month each June. And whereas the month of June was chosen to commemorate the events that took place more than 50 years ago at the Stonewall Inn in Manhattan, New York on June 28, 1969. And whereas LGBTQIA+ Americans have achieved significant milestones, ensuring that future generations of people in the United States will enjoy a more equal and just society. And whereas, despite extraordinary progress, LGBTQIA+ Americans still face discrimination. And whereas, in passing City Ordinance 1784, the city provides protection of the rights of all persons against discrimination in employment, housing, public accommodations, or public services based on age, race, national origin, color, disability, education, familial status, sex, sexual orientation, gender expression, gender identity, height, marital status, religion, source of income, or weight. And whereas on March 16, 2023, the state of Michigan followed, also expanding the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act to prohibit discriminatory practices, policies, and customs in the exercise of those rights based upon sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. And whereas it is imperative that all people in our community feel valued, safe, empowered, and supported by their peers and community leaders. And whereas it is the desire of the city to promote universal opportunity, access, and belonging for all of those we serve, and for those that find themselves in our community. And whereas we value the cultural, civic, and economic contributions of the LGBTQIA+ community and organizations like Out on the Lakeshore and the PFLAG Holland Lakeshore, our first Lakeshore organization to support the LGBTQIA people, their parents and families, and allies. Now, therefore, I, Nathan Box, Mayor of the City of Holland, Michigan, and members of the Holland City Council, proclaim the month of June as Pride Month. We encourage residents to recognize the contributions made by members of the LGBTQIA+ community and actively promote the principles of liberty and justice for all, and encourage participation in community events to show support for the LGBTQIA+ community during the month of June. Given under my hand and the seal of the City of Holland, this June 7, 2023, Mayor Nathan Box. And that is all that I have this evening. Any communications, motions from council members? Mr. Corbin, and then Mr. Byrd.
Just reminders of my colleagues on the board that were, your evaluations of the city manager, if you can get those into our attorney, our city attorney, does not come to me, it goes directly to him. I don't even receive copies, okay? So make sure you get that into him. We did have a few questions come up by council members wanting to know if we would have the past evaluation, the consolidation of the past evaluation available. Well, we're not able to provide that to you directly, but we can do that in closed session. So if you prefer to look at that before you complete your evaluation forms, then we would just need to have a closed session to do that. So just kind of get a consensus of what you would like to do on that. Is there anyone finding a need to meet in closed session for that purpose? Yeah, kind of a head count thing.
Everybody does a performance evaluation. It's like, well, what happened last year? What did we say last year? And that's classic human resources. And that's one of our most important jobs. So, me, I think it'd be important, but if no one else does, I can live with it.
Okay, just, again, consensus?
Don't we have a closed session, after we complete the evaluations, we have a closed session?
Yes, but this is
Can we-
prior to, because
could-
people wanted to look at the previous evaluation to help them look toward improvements, or improvements have been made, I suspect. So it would have to be done, like I said, in closed session. It could be at one of our study sessions.
Yeah, I guess what I was thinking is that it's not gonna, what I said last year isn't going to necessarily inform what I say this year.
Okay.
But it might be helpful to see that's how we measure, right? I think what Jay is saying.
Sure.
So if I saw it on the day that we were actually
Okay.
reviewing it, would be enough for me.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
I think the potential for positive impact is greater than any negative, so I would be in favor of having that closed session.
Others?
Can we clarify what that is? Is it during the evaluation, is it before the evaluation?
It can be both.
Like you're both going on.
Yeah, so it can be one either before, right? So it gives you an opportunity to review it and then make your comments and submit those comments in your annual evaluation to the attorney. Or we can do like Councilman Raymond is suggesting, is just do it on the day of the review of our evaluation forms from this year and just compare them on that level.
I think having completed it, I would be more agreeable to what Lynn is suggesting of doing it at the same time versus an additional meeting, because it's supposed to be due today. So
Yeah.
it feels good that we should make something like that happen right now.
Okay.
Yeah,
Others?
I completed mine. Would it be possible for the people who are interested to talk with the attorney by themselves? Is that possible?
I don't know.
Question.
I'm gonna kick that back to our attorney.
The, the review of that in a closed session, which was requested, it is certainly a process that can take place. You could have multiple closed sessions. Obviously, that's, if there's time sensitivity, the council can take that into consideration. But because a closed session was requested, I think that's the proper forum to look at any information that you would like to review to do the evaluation. So I don't think there's really a process to have a closed session meeting with an attorney one-on-one. I think it has to be the entire council has to meet with the attorney in a closed session under the Open Meetings Act.
If I may.
Yep.
I think, as I'm perceiving this, I think the value in this is, at least as I see it, and I think as I'm hearing others talk about this, is that almost as a policy measure, not formally a policy, I guess, but looking at the past year's evaluation as a resource in informing the current evaluation, whatever value we individually take from that. So to do it piecemeal seems to me kind of counterintuitive. If we're going to do it, in my mind, we should do it as a group. We should do it prior to the acceptance of, some may have sent their evaluations in already, But I think if we're going to do it, let's do it as a group. If we have to do it in closed session, let's do that. And that should answer any questions anyone would have prior to their submitting their evaluations. Just to do it one-on-one or two-on, whatever, seems kind of wonky to me. So that's my opinion.
I tend to lean along the lines of Mr. Vreeman and Ms. Raymond. I've completed my evaluation, and I don't think that reviewing the previous results of an evaluation would change anything that I put in this year's evaluation, because I'm looking at it in terms of what's been done this year. I think it may be helpful to look at it in regard to when we're already planning on having a closed session as a council to discuss the results of this year's review. I think that makes a whole lot of sense to look at, well, where were we last year? Where do we think we are this year? But I don't think going back and looking at what we talked about last year would inform any of the decisions that I made on the evaluation for this year. Jay?
We have a Cracker Jack human resources person, and I guess a simple question to her would be, anytime you have an evaluation of a person, do you not look at what was written down the year before to see what was said, to see what actions were there? We had quite a discussion 2 years in a row, and I've never seen anything that has been presented to the city manager yet of those discussions. So now we're going into our third one. I don't know what gets relayed. If you remember, those were some serious discussions we had.
I remember completely, and I'm not suggesting, Jay, that we as a council don't look at what was discussed in previous years. What I'm saying is, I think that we need to look at that in regard to what we think is going on this year and do that comparison rather than looking at that comparison before we do the evaluation this year.
I would just challenge you to ask our human relations person if that is in fact the way these evaluations are conducted. If that is not something you look at before you sit them down and say, this is what we said last year, how you doing, what are you going to do this year? So if there's no sense of wanting to do it, I can live with it. I'm just saying it's unfortunate we're here. Half of us have filled them out. It's just the process is, once again, kind of whatever. So I'm okay. Just let it go. I don't really know. Let it go.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess we'll just proceed. Make sure you get your evaluations in, and we'll get them again to the attorney. Do not copy me. I don't need a copy of those.
Well, I am still perfectly willing to take a look at last year's evaluation during our session, our
Good.
closed session.
So, Mr. Duckworth, can you bring copies of the previous closed session with you on that day?
Yes, I could bring whatever council directs. Yeah.
Please do that,
Yes.
and then also each individual council member's responses
Yes.
from last year as well.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other communications, motions from council members? Mr. Byrd, sorry, I forgot about you down there, Quincy.
That's all right. I just wanted to talk a little bit about Juneteenth. I Am Academy is putting on Juneteenth Freedom Festival in Holland this year. It'll be from June 10th through June 19th. A few of the activities that they have going on: 3-on-3 basketball, live music. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of Stephen Malcolm, but he is a Dove Award winner from, I believe, last year. He'll be here. Some local talent, community speakers, vendors, food vendors, information booths, inflatable balloons, animals, and a few other things as well for the community to partake in. They're also still looking for volunteers, and you can go to iamacademymi.org. That is iamacademymi.org. And looking forward to being a part of it and visiting. So that's it for me.
Where is that located?
As far as
the events,
location,
the events.
I would say go to their Facebook page
okay. I see.
and look. They're going to be throughout the whole city.
Okay.
There's a website too, isn't there? Is it
Yes,
iamacademy.org? Is
it
that
is.
would be a
It's
great place to take a look?
iamacademy.org.
There you go.
Thank you.
Yep. One more time, iamacademymi.org.
Wait, what?
I wanted to give you that shot one more time. Any other communications, motions from council members? Yes.
One last thing. I was not able to attend the festivities last week, the parade, and the ceremony after the parade, the Memorial Day parade. Tulip time is really awesome, but to me, Memorial Day it's head and shoulders above everything else. And I say that because there are people who have sacrificed everything that a person could sacrifice, the ultimate sacrifice, their life, for us to have tulip time, for us to live in what I would say is the greatest country in the world, the greatest country in the history of the world. And I just wanted to bring that to our attention. You know, like I said, I was not able to participate in the festivities this year, and I did not want time to go by without expressing my appreciation for all of those who have given the ultimate sacrifice for every last one of us in here, regardless of our ideology, regardless of our belief, regardless of how we see the world and the lens that we look through. They all sacrificed for every last one of us. So I just wanted to share that.
Great. Thank you, Quincy. Any other appointments, motions, communications from council members? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to enter into a closed-door session to review negotiation of collective bargaining agreements. As we do note to folks, there is the possibility that council will take action following this. We don't know for sure, but they may. We will not be coming back onto TV following this. But if you're interested in finding out what the results are, if any, feel free to stick around, not in this room, but feel free to stick around and wait for the door to come open. Or you can check the minutes or check at City Hall after 8:30 tomorrow morning, and you'll be able to find that out as well. But I am entertaining that motion to enter a closed-door session to review negotiation of a collective bargaining agreements.
So moved.
Moved by Vreeman. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Hoekstra. Any discussion? No. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Coronado?
Yes.
Arnstorst?
Yes.
Hoekstra?
Yes.
Raymond?
Yes.
Byrd?
Yes.
Vreeman?
Yes.
Peters? Corbin? Mayor Box?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We'll take a quick 5-minute recess, and then we will come back in closed session. So we're going to have to ask all of the members of the public that you're going to have to leave us for now. But thank you.